begin our meeting. So, good evening, everyone. And I would like to bring the meeting of March 7th, 2022, the San Carlos Planning Commission to order. And we can begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There. We can begin. We can have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Garvey?
Present.
Commissioner Iacopone?
Present.
Commissioner Bradley?
Present.
And again, for the record, Kristen Clements is not well. She is absent this evening. Chair Roof?
Present. Well, the next item on our agenda is the public comment, and in accordance with Assembly Bill 361, this Planning Commission meeting will be held via teleconference. Here we are. Thank you. And the public comment that we're doing now is limited to items that are not on the agenda. The Commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act, Government Code Section 54954.2. However, the Commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future Commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. So, Sarah, is there anyone in the waiting room for a public comment on an item that's not on the agenda?
There are none at this time.
Okay, well, let's move to the next topic then, which is the minutes. And so today, the minutes from the minutes that were in the meeting packet were from an earlier meeting by mistake, and so we'd like to postpone the adoption of the minutes from February 22nd to a future meeting, which would be March 21st. And so this requires a motion, a second, and a roll call to continue this item to the next meeting. So I would entertain a motion and a second.
I'll move that we continue the approval of the minutes until the next meeting when they can be presented in full correctly.
I'll second that.
Second.
Great. Motion and a second. Have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Iacopone?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
And Chair Roof?
Yes. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public hearing.
Sorry about that.
On the next slide, there we go. And the procedure for public hearing is the staff will present a report on the history, physical features on the application, followed with the staff's recommendation, and then the applicant will make a presentation. And thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. And when all interested parties have had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those items you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should state their name prior to addressing the commission. This was the staff in preparing the minutes. And the item we have for tonight is 555 and 661 El Camino Real, APN 050-076-070, which is a request to amend the Transit Village sign program for commercial buildings 7 and 8. Staff, do you have a presentation?
Yes, I do. Good evening, Commissioners and Chair Roof. My name is Sarah Cadona, Contract Assistant Planner with the City of San Carlos. And the item before you is a request for an amendment to the Transit Village sign program for the commercial buildings 7 and 8 located at 555 and 661 in El Camino Real. The applicant is also requesting a fourth wall sign facing El Camino Real for a potential future fourth tenant. The proposed amendment to the sign program will include adding an additional 22 sign locations amongst the 2 commercial buildings at 555 El Camino, which is building number 7, and 661 El Camino, which is building number 8. The applicant is also requesting approval to allow for a fourth wall sign for a future fourth tenant on the first floor of 661 El Camino Real, building number 8. The image to the left is an aerial map of the 2 commercial buildings 7 and 8. These buildings are located within the railroad corridor in between El Camino Real and the Caltrain train tracks, and also at the intersection of El Camino and San Carlos Avenue. In between these 2 commercial buildings is the historic depot. The picture to the right is an example of an existing wall sign located on building 8 facing El Camino Real. Sign programs are required for multi-tenant projects, which are allowed to deviate from the code requirements because the intent of the sign program is to achieve uniformity in all sign types by using the same color, materials, and style. February 20th, 2018, this was the first time that the Planning Commission reviewed and approved a sign program for the Transit Village commercial buildings 7 and 8. This approval allowed for 20 sign locations between the 2 commercial buildings. On June 16th, 2021, the applicant submitted an amendment to the existing sign program requesting 22 additional sign locations and the removal of 2 previously approved sign locations, equaling a total of 40 sign locations. Here is Building 7's floor plan. The building is built to accommodate 2 tenants overall, 1 on the ground floor and 1 on the second floor. As a note, the key reads as the signs in blue represent the previously approved sign types and locations, and the orange signs are the newly proposed sign types and locations. Here is Building 8's floor plans, and as you can see, this building can accommodate for 5 tenants overall. On the ground floor, 3 on the ground floor and 2 on the second floor. This is where the applicant's request for a fourth wall sign comes in, as the applicant would like some flexibility in that if they were to do a tenant improvement and split Suite 103 into 2 spaces, they would want to offer the fourth tenant the option for a wall sign that faces El Camino Real. The applicant is requesting additional sign locations with the following different sign types. Sign type Z2 is a wall-mounted sign that is proposed to be over building entrances or windows. And this sign is allowed to have a maximum of 30 square feet. And the applicant is proposing 10 additional Z2 sign locations. Sign type Z4 is a window signage that shall be placed on entry doors showing the tenant's name and hours and is not allowed to exceed 20% coverage of the glass door. And the applicant is proposing 8 additional Z4 sign locations. Sign type Z6 is a projecting blade sign that will display the tenant's name, which cannot exceed 6 square feet per sign face. and must have an 11-foot minimum height clearance and can only project 4 feet out from the building face. The applicant is proposing 2 additional Z6 sign locations. And finally, sign type Z7 is a canopy mounted sign that is proposed to be over building entrances, which cannot exceed the area of 12 square feet, and the applicant is proposing 2 additional Z7 locations. This table shows the total sign locations approved in 2018 and the proposed number of sign locations for the current proposal. You can see that there were 20 sign locations approved in 2018, and the 2020 proposal includes the removal of 2 signs with the addition of 22 new sign locations for a total of 40 potential sign locations. And the numbers shown in red is what was previously approved, and the black is what is currently proposed, which means that the revised sign program before you today will completely replace the previously approved Transit Village sign program. A sign program for multi-tenants allow for deviation from code requirements pertaining to sign standards. The applicant is requesting to allow for more than 1 sign per tenant and to exceed the maximum square footage allowed per tenant. There is a need for some flexibility for these commercial buildings because it is a large development and because its location allows people to approach these buildings from a number of different directions. In order to display what types of businesses are here on all sides of the building, there needs to be some flexibility in the number of signage and total square footage. This table demonstrates the revised sign program build out and how many sign locations would actually be used and what their total square footage would be. If both buildings were fully occupied, the maximum number of signs would be 36 signs out of the 40 potential sign locations. And the maximum square footage for both buildings 7 and 8 would be 504 square feet. Here are the elevations for building 7, and the key remains the same with the blue representing the previously approved sign types and locations, and the orange representing the new sign types and locations. Here is building 8's elevations. And if you take a look at the west elevations where the red arrow is pointing, this is the building face that faces towards El Camino Real. And this is where the applicant is requesting a 4th wall sign facing El Camino to accommodate a possible future tenant on the 1st floor of building 8. And staff is recommending to only allow a maximum of 3 wall signs facing El Camino because staff believes that any more than 3 wall signs will create an overproliferation of signage facing El Camino. Here are the color and materials that are required for all tenants to follow. And I would like to note that the color and materials board is consistent and is not proposed to change from the 2018 approved sign program. And all signs are required to be aluminum panels with aluminum flat cutout letters, and they can be painted in the following 3 colors, which are black metallic, copper metallic, and Carta Bianca. And the images that are found on the screen are 2 examples of existing wall signs that follow the color and materials board with the existing sign program. On February 21st, 2022, staff mailed out public noticing to all property owners and occupants within a 300-foot radius, and since staff has received no comments about the project. Here's the motion. If you choose to accept it, staff as well as the applicant are present to answer any questions that the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions from commissioners before we, does the applicant have a presentation or is this it? Sarah, I was asking, does the applicant have a presentation or
let's see.
Are they
Christine?
Hi, this is Christine Kropp from Prometheus. Marnie Lopez has joined us as well, and she would like to speak on behalf of the project.
Okay, welcome, Marnie.
There we are. This is Marnie Lopez with Prometheus. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We greatly appreciate, and Sarah, your time as well as we work through this process. So yeah, I would just like to provide a little bit of color on our perspective as we have worked through leasing efforts on this project now for 3+ years. I'm certain all are aware that we originally came to market as 100% office on this project and have shifted our focus to retail on the lower floors. Those retail footprints are usually substantially smaller. So we'll have a notably larger tenant count than we anticipated in the earlier submissions of the sign program. And that's what we're trying to speak to. I think we share city's concerns with overpopulating the elevations of the building with specifically the larger signs, the wall signs. And our initial intent in approaching the city was to create alternate locations, not to maximize all locations. We have caps per tenant, but to ensure that we could orient those signs to a tenant's entry or place of occupancy. And that was one of the initial challenges that we ran into. So the originally approved locations were not aligned with perhaps where a tenant's entry location was. So it was a little disorienting. So, and then mimicking Sarah's comments, the access points to this project are numerous. So a number of these signs are much smaller in scale, intended to be directional as we route people from either the Caltrain lot or our parking that's north of Building 7 and find their way through the plaza, hopefully to find our retailers, should we be able to get these spaces leased. We're excited to report we've had some good interest in recent months, kind of coming out of COVID. Sign locations and the availability or the visibility for these retail operators is noted. It's a common question. So happy to answer any questions you have. Again, our goal is to maintain the integrity of the program. We're proud of the materials and the content, the quality of that. And as a reminder, we're looking for alternate locations and certainly not to occupy every location that's noted on the plans. So any questions I might be able to answer for you?
Thank you. Thank you, Marnie.
Yes.
So we can entertain questions from the planning commissioners of a clarifying nature, and then we'll open for public comment before we have deliberation. So are there any clarifying questions?
But at this point,
And I see Commissioner Iacoponi.
Thanks, Chair Roof. Just one for staff, and that is regarding the concern about over-proliferation, and then linking back to the Prometheus's ability to subdivide first floor units. Is there any prohibition on their making more smaller locations out of the footprint that was envisaged to be fewer larger locations? Can they do that?
So if I can restate your question and see if I'm getting this correctly. So the division through a tenant improvement, shrinking the size of the first floor tenants for building number 8. Is that your question? Is it doable?
To do that? Yes.
Yes, they are.
Okay. And therefore the question that is been posed, if I understand it right, is what if you end up with approval for fewer tenant identifying signs over entrances than there are tenants. Prometheus is worried about a mismatch.
So
Is that correct? Is that what I should understand?
So I think, sorry, go on. You can go ahead, Marnie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, Lisa.
Sorry. I was just going to maybe just sort of interject a question, a clarifying question. I think the concern has to do with the wall sign, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah. Maybe not necessarily that they can't have additional signage. Is it just the wall sign?
Yes, it's mainly pertaining to the wall signs facing El Camino that we are trying to restrict because these are the largest signs and they are facing El Camino. We're worried about over proliferation and too much signage facing El Camino.
Okay, thanks. And then the last piece would appreciate, can you just go back to the picture and then point to the one that they would like and staff is recommending to not do? That visual would be great. Appreciate it.
Sarah, is this the right sign or the correct location for that additional sign?
So it's not necessarily this particular sign, but I was talking more about this entire elevation where it really shows all 5 of the wall signs and how city staff is recommending that we only allow 3 of them to be filled at one time. But the orange, the 3 different orange wall signs are different options that the tenant can pick in the location. But only 3 of the wall signs can be occupied at one time. But this gives the tenants the ability to pick the location.
And so let me jump in here asking the suites 101, 102, 103, 104, are they sort of more or less evenly spaced across the west elevation, the figure 1 here?
So there's currently only suite number 101, 102, and 103. And the wall signs that are directly over the entrances are the far left orange sign, the blue sign, correct, Lisa, and then the far blue sign. So those are at entry point doorways, and then the 2 middle orange signs are above windows.
Okay, thank you. I see Commissioner Garvey, you have a question, and then Commissioner Bradley. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair Roof. I think my question may have just gotten answered. I wanted to know if there were doors under each of these signs or windows, and I'm hearing that there are doors under 3 of these signs and windows under 2 of the signs. So my sense is that there's an entry door somewhere, and once you get in that entry door, there's probably additional signage to direct you to the right suite. So I guess there are not doors under all of these, just 3.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bradley, did you have a question?
Yes, hypothetically, if there are only 3 signs permitted of the type we're talking about, and if there were 4 tenants, 1 tenant would not be able to have a sign, I suppose. But if there were 2 tenants, just say hypothetically, would they still get 3 signs?
No, they would only get 1 wall sign facing El Camino. But right. There is an option to get 1 additional wall sign facing the train tracks.
Oh, yes, I seem to remember reading that now. What I'm really mostly concerned about, again, like the staff, is over proliferation of signs on the El Camino, as well as generally not too many signs, whether they wouldn't matter too much. It might be nice to have their sign advertising their business facing the train riders and that sort of thing. But,
okay, Commissioner Bradley, let's hold that comment until we're in the deliberations. I don't know if there will be any public comment, but it's always nice to get those registered before we begin deliberating. So if there are no more clarifying questions, let's open for public comment if there is anybody. If you'd like to make a public comment, now is the time on agenda item 6A, Transit Village Sign Program. And you can do that via the Zoom interface or where you can virtually raise your hand, or if you're on the phone by pressing *9 and then *6 to unmute. Sarah, is there anyone in the waiting room for public comment here?
There are none at this time.
Okay, let's move to our deliberations. I guess since we didn't open public, there were no public comment, we don't need to formally close that. Correct, Lisa?
Actually, you could choose to close it, but if somebody joins, you'd have to reopen it. Mm-hmm. Say, since you're moving on to deliberations, it's probably a good idea to close it if there are no public comments. I think it would be wise just for the, just public comment, and there were none, so then you closed it.
Okay, so let's formalize that. I would entertain a motion to close the public comment.
I'll move that we close the public comment period.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Iacoponi?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
And Chair Rue?
Yes. Okay, so now we get our deliberations. Commissioner Bradley, I sort of might have cut you off a little. Did you have thoughts that you'd like to reiterate?
Overriding comment, I suppose, because we've had two sign ordinance proposals this month already, and I'm always concerned about an over proliferation of signs, because I think they're distracting and in many cases a safety hazard. But this is very different from what we had 2 weeks ago on 101 freeway. But again, since we have a historic building in the middle of all this, I am very concerned about people when they get back of the fountain there, or even out to the sidewalk on the El Camino, that they're bombarded with too many signs to detract from our historic people, especially once it gets opened again, hopefully. Comment.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Commissioner Garvey, and then Commissioner Iacoponi.
Thank you, Chair Roof. And thanks, Commissioner Bradley, for your comments. I would echo many of those comments, in that I too am concerned about too many signs. We have 42 signs here, and some of them, the Z2 signs, of which there are 10, is a large number of Z2 signs. I understand from the applicant that they might not all be utilized, but they would have, the authority or the permission to use them. I guess I'm inclined to support the 10 Z2 signs and all of the other signs, I'm on the fence with this fourth wall sign facing El Camino. I'm interested in what my fellow commissioners think. I drove by those signs today. They're nice large signs, and yet I agree with Commissioner Bradley that too many of them is a lot of signage, especially when you lump it with all of the other signage that we're talking about tonight. So my inclination would be to support all of the signs but the fourth wall sign, but I'm open to persuasion from my fellow commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner Garvey. Commissioner Iacoponi.
Thanks, Chair Roof, and my colleagues. Again, it's always good to hear your perspectives. There, give you cause to pause for a second. I think this area is trending toward retail. Retail, I'm aware, depends on good communication of location, maybe brand. And I think the objective is to make these units be viable for the developer and therefore for the city, and therefore attract people who want to be in there. And I can imagine that one of their requirements would be, hey, if I'm tucked inside, even if I don't have a door, I'd like people to know I'm in here. Or differently, it might be a requirement. If people don't know I'm in here, then my business won't get off the ground and I won't be successful, and you'll have an empty space. So I'm wondering if there's a trade for the square footage for the fourth sign, if the opportunity could be, well, if you put up the fourth wall sign, then something else is foregone. Or I suppose another one is to shrink the square footage so that you end up with 4 signs, but with no change in total square footage. And I guess that by thinking out loud on those things, what I'm saying is my bias is to give flexibility to attract the kind of businesses that will serve the public, and let the public driving by coming on Camino or down San Carlos know that they're there or walking around, and also accommodate this concern of too many signs. So that's what my thinking is. And then I suppose the question to staff is, did you was there any conversation with the developer around any other kinds of trade-offs? Keeping 4, but reducing elsewhere?
There was not. They were pretty adamant on keeping that fourth wall sign for that potential fourth tenant. But if you would like, Marnie can speak to that as well on her thoughts.
Here.
Marnie, would you like? Yes.
I would very much. Thank you. And I appreciate your thoughts and comments about the success of our retail operators. We certainly have shifted to a focus of 100% retail on the ground floor, which challenging and very challenging post-COVID. So our goal, again, we're not a big fan of signage at this scale, but it is a necessity for our retailers as far as visibility and awareness. The wayfinding to this site and the parking is a bit challenging given the speed at which folks will pass on El Camino. And that is who we're targeting for certain, is to ensure that those that come to Trestle are able to locate and find the vendors and retail operators. I would be concerned that decreasing the size of those signs might not achieve the visibility for the vehicular traffic where they're focused. But I did, if I may, offer the one reminder that we're certainly not suggesting to populate each and every one of these locations and never to exceed the number of tenants in the building. We're not a proponent of multiple signs per tenant, and definitely not signs of that scale. So it would be individual to each tenant, a singular wall sign.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And maybe I'll.
That's what scares me, is that each tenant could put up what they want, and you end up with different sizes, different colors, and different fonts, letters.
May I respond to that? Oops, I'm sorry.
Well, maybe Sarah, can you respond to the restrictions on the sign design?
Yes. So the whole point of the sign program is to create uniformity, and that is having a consistency with the color, the materials, and the styles. And so we want all of the signs at building 7 and 8 to look very similar and cohesive. And so that's the whole point of the sign program, and the proposed colors and materials and strict guidelines with this sign program is to create uniformity with all of these different signs with the multi-tenants.
Thank you. So maybe I'll jump in with my thoughts, then we can continue deliberating. But I also want to be careful not to overdo it with signage, but do understand that that a retailer would need a wall sign type sign in order to be successful. And as far as reducing the square footage, that would be a reasonable compromise, but it's a little complicated because they just want to hold this 4th sign option in their back pocket. So, that means there would be 3 existing signs, and then they'd like the option of putting up a 4th if needed. So the changing the size of all of them seems a little bit of a cumbersome arrangement. I was kind of pleased to see the picture of showing the El Camino facing sign locations. And the signs have a pretty good spot to be. Right? So it's not like you're piling on the extra sign on top of, just above another one. It's a fairly, yes, this is the figure I was referring to. It's a fairly aesthetically acceptable location. So having 2 of the orange square rectangles filled with a sign instead of just 1, to me doesn't have a huge visual impact. And so trying to weigh the visual impact versus the opportunity for a retailer to show their name above their business, I'm inclined to allow it if necessary. And if there's some room for compromise, I'd be happy to talk more about that. But I think the signs are not overly loud or attention getting. If you're just passing by, the format is quite it's quite pleasing. So it's not like they're neon signs that are obnoxious in their character. So those are my thoughts. And Commissioner Garvey, do you have an additional thought?
I appreciated your point, Chair Roof, about these are not neon signs, and I hadn't focused on that, but that's a good point. And I meant also to say that I did like the color board and the materials that are chosen, and I drove by those signs today. They're attractive, sort of understated signs, not illuminated neon in your face signs, and so that's a point to consider. And I do hear the applicants say that that this is in their back pocket. This is not necessarily going to be used. And I hear Commissioner Iacoponi's point that with the smaller retail footprint, more tenants and people want to be noticed, and they want you to know that they're in that space. And so that's also an important point. So I think for those reasons, I would also be inclined to not only support all the other signs I said I would support, but the 4th wall sign that is facing El Camino.
Commissioner Iacoponi or Commissioner Bradley, any additional thoughts?
I think I agree with the findings on this case. Always controversial when anyone proposes to put up a lot of signs, even a few signs. The applicants in this case have done a very thoughtful job, and their sign program, I hope they don't have to come back in another 2 years, because this is what, the third time we've modified the sign program for. So hopefully we'll get it right this time. I voted the last time, like 4 years ago already.
Okay. Commissioner Iacoponi, anything final before we see if we have a consensus?
Yeah, thank you. I'm supportive of the smaller signs on the doors and the other ones that are proposed. And I think the only question for me is 3 wall signs or 4, and I'm in favor of the 4th. Again, because retail focus will really benefit from letting people know that that's where they are. And I think it is important to know that the style, color will be well controlled and consistent. So I think it will be tasteful and tastefully done. Glad it's not 5, good with 4.
Okay. Well, any more discussion points before we see if anybody would like to make a motion? Well, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution approving the updated sign program for the 2 commercial buildings 7 and 8 in the San Carlos Transit Village mixed-use project. And I'll ask Lisa, do I need to amend anything here to relating to the 4th wall sign, or is that inferred by the words that are already up that I already read?
I think we should clarify for the record that that would include the 4th wall sign
Right.
that was also requested by the applicant.
This motion includes the 4th wall sign facing El Camino as requested.
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion in a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Iacoponi?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
And Chair Rue?
Yes. Thank you to the applicants.
Thank you very, very much for your time and your support of our retailers out at Trestle.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The next item on our agenda is reports, correspondence, and general information. Starting with letter A, report on recent city council actions.
And none for this evening. It feels like this year is going pretty quickly and is a little bit of a blur, but in case I didn't mention it, this may be a repeat, but the city council did authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with RRM Design Group to assist the city in preparing a specific plan. So that project will kick off internally, at least in March, as we begin to prepare for this project. And one of the first tasks will be to create an advisory committee. So more information will be coming out regarding that particular endeavor, most likely in mid-April. So I'll have
Lisa, I didn't catch what was that project for? What was that project?
The downtown specific plan.
Oh, this. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
We're the consultant.
RRM Design Group.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good to hear. That's important.
And like I said, there will be much more to come on that, but at least we're kind of the first step has been taken.
Okay.
Right.
Should we go to the next item, Planning Commission comments or reports from the commissioners? Commissioner Iacoponi.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the record, today I met with Mr. Sean Gibson of Vive Properties. He invited an opportunity to hear about the developments at the 808 Alameda de las Pulgas property, and we spent some time catching up on the developments since well, over the past year and a half or so. So just wanted to note that for the record.
Thank you. Any other Planning Commission comments or reports? Commissioner
yes.
Garvey? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair Roof. I wanted to say that I registered to participate or to listen in to the Vive is hosting a community meeting on March 9th for the 808 Alameda project. They're offering 2 community meetings that day, one at noon, one at 5:30. And I'll be listening in on the one that's happening at noon.
And through the chair, I'll take a poll, just a little soft poll under item D once we get there, just so that other commissioners can understand who else might be interested or may have already registered.
And I guess I'll jump in here to remind the commission that my residence is within the number of feet that requires me to recuse myself from topics on this from discussion of this that application. So. Any other Planning Commission comments or reports? Let's move to correspondence.
Done for this evening. Thank you.
And finally, are there planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects?
Yes, and one of the first things I was going to share with the commission and anyone listening at home is that indeed, Vive, the developer for the site at 806 Alameda de las Pulgas, which consists of a number of townhome projects. And I think we still have someone who's left their mic on, and I don't know, Dara, if you can look at that and maybe put that person on mute so we make sure that everyone can hear okay. But again, they're, like Commissioner Garvey has mentioned, the applicant has revised their plans, so they want to provide an opportunity to those revised plans to the community, and will do so this coming Wednesday with 2 opportunities, like Commissioner Garvey said, one at noon and then another one at 5:30 p.m. And so I believe at this point, I've heard that Commissioner Garvey is attending the one at noon, and I think Commissioner Iacoponi would also like to attend the one at noon. And that's fine. If there's just a majority of 2, I think that's perfectly fine to attend and listen in. And of course, you know, the responsibilities under the Brown Act, and as long as there's no discussion amongst the commissioners relating to the information being presented, it's perfectly fine to attend. But if we should get a third person wanting to attend to observe the presentation and understand the project a little bit more, then I would encourage you to attend the one at 5:30. So we don't have a quorum. Okay. All right. Were there any questions on that? Okay. All right. Thank you. The next thing I wanted to discuss with the commission was what's on the agenda for March 21st, and it's a pretty full agenda that evening. So make sure to have some snacks on the table. But we do have 4 items on the agenda. The first is a general plan consistency finding for new capital improvement projects. So the commission may be aware that the council is slated to adopt its mid-year budget on March 28th. So before they do that, one of the requirements as part of that budget, there are capital improvement projects that are being proposed by staff for council consideration. For that process, we do need to make a general plan consistency finding that these projects are consistent with the general plan. So we will be bringing that forward on the 21st. We will also be bringing forward the annual housing element progress report. So this will be where we show and present information about building permits that were issued in the year 2021 for new housing development, and a couple more items that we're required to share with the commission before it goes on to City Council for their review. Also on the agenda is the protected tree ordinance and a use permit for a new business, which is called Auto Vino. And if Sarah, if you're still on the line, can you provide that address to the commission?
Yes, the address is 380 Industrial, which is across the street from the old Osh.
Sarah, I was trying to remember the address and I couldn't quite get there. So thank you. And so, yeah, so that concludes the items that we'll have on the commission's agenda for March 21st. And that's all I have for this evening.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for an efficient meeting. We're coming in at less than an hour, and I would like to adjourn today's meeting.
Thanks,
Bye-bye,
David.
everyone.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, David. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you.